$500,000, the billionaire said, sliding the contract toward me. And all I need from you is an heir. I stared at Adrian Whitmore across a table, so polished I could see my own disbelief reflected in it. 3 hours earlier, I had been sitting outside my sister's hospital room, pretending not to panic over a bill that had more zeros than my bank account had dollars. Then a private car arrived, a lawyer called my name, and somehow I ended up 40 floors above Manhattan with the most famous Omega in the country asking me to change both our lives. Adrian looked exactly like the business magazines promised. Pale blonde hair, cool gray-blue eyes, and a navy suit sharp enough to make the entire penthouse feel underdressed. He was 31, worth several $billion, and apparently incapable of saying anything without making it sound like a boardroom ultimatum. I looked down at the first page. My full name was printed beneath his. Mason Reed. Alpha. 29. Former rescue specialist. Current private security contractor. You already filled this out, I said. Most of it. Before meeting me. I don't enjoy wasting time. Of course he didn't. Time probably charged him rent. I flipped another page. The agreement was clinical, precise, and completely detached from the fact that it involved a future child. I would move into his penthouse during the medical process. I would attend every required appointment. I would keep his identity and condition private. If the process succeeded, I would receive $500,000 and leave his life permanently. No claim, no relationship, no contact unless approved by Adrian himself. You want a father without having to deal with one? I said. His expression did not change, but his fingers tightened slightly around the silver pen beside him. I want an heir. That wasn't my question. His gaze lifted to mine. For 1 second, the billionaire disappeared, and I saw something quieter underneath. Tired, maybe, or afraid. Then the wall returned. My family trust transfers controlling interest in Whitmore Biotech unless I produce a legal heir before my 32nd birthday. When is that? For months. From now. I leaned back. Beyond the glass walls, Manhattan glittered below us, bright and distant. Everything in Adrian's world looked expensive enough to be untouchable, including him. Why me? I asked. Your medical screening was compatible. I never took a medical screening for this. Silence. Not long. Just long enough. Adrian reached for the contract. I placed my hand over it first. His eyes dropped to my fingers, then quickly returned to my face. You researched me, I said. Thoroughly. My work history. Yes. My sister. Another pause. Yes. My chest tightened. Lily's surgery was scheduled for Friday. Without payment, it might be postponed again. Adrian knew that. He knew exactly how desperate I was before I ever stepped through his door. I should have walked out. Instead, I picked up the pen. One condition, I said. You don't get to treat me like equipment, and you don't get to treat that child like a clause in a trust. His calm expression cracked, barely. You're not in a position to make demands. Then find someone else. I stood. Adrian looked at the contract, then at me. Sit down, Mr. Reed. I didn't move. His voice softened by half a degree. Please. That single word stopped me. I sat again and turned to the signature page. That was when I noticed the date printed beneath my name. 3 months ago. Adrian Whitmore had chosen me long before I knew he existed. The date beneath my name sat on the page like a quiet accusation. 3 months ago. I looked up at Adrian, but he did not flinch. You knew you wanted me before today. His jaw tightened. I knew you were suitable. That is not the same thing. It is the only answer I am prepared to give. I almost laughed. He had invited me into his home, investigated my family, and placed $500,000 between us, yet somehow I was the unreasonable one for asking questions. I closed the contract. Then I am not signing. For the first time, Adrian looked genuinely unsettled. Not angry, not offended. Unsettled. His gaze moved toward the windows, where the city lights shimmered far below us. What do you want to know? He asked. Why me? Your health records were excellent. You already said that. Your work history demonstrated restraint under pressure. Still not enough. He exhaled slowly. You helped an Omega during a hotel fire 2 years ago. I remembered the night immediately. Smoke in the lobby. Sprinklers pouring from the ceiling. A frightened man frozen near the stairwell while everyone else rushed past him. I had carried him outside and stayed until paramedics arrived. That was my job, I said. You were off duty. Adrian met my eyes. You stayed anyway. Something in his voice changed on that last word. It was softer, almost personal. Then he straightened and became the billionaire again. My legal team will revise the terms you objected to. I want visitation rights decided by both of us, not only you. Agreed. I want full medical transparency. Agreed. And no one makes decisions for the child based on what protects the company. That one took longer. Finally, Adrian nodded. I signed. By sunset, my life had been reduced to 2 suitcases and a temporary bedroom on the opposite side of Adrian's penthouse. He gave me the house rules himself. No press. No unapproved guests. No entering his private office. No personal questions unless they affected the arrangement. You really know how to make a man feel welcome, I said. You are not here to feel welcome, right? I am here to provide excellent customer service. His mouth almost moved. Almost. Then he walked away. Later that night, I searched for the kitchen and opened the wrong door. It was not a pantry. It was a study, and every wall was covered with files. My files. Employment records. Training evaluations. Photographs from rescue sites. Even a copy of Lily's hospital schedule. I stepped closer, anger rising, until I noticed one image pinned above the desk. It showed me outside that hotel fire, kneeling beside the Omega I had helped. On the back, written in Adrian's careful handwriting, were 4 words. He stayed when others left. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. Adrian stood in the doorway, pale and perfectly still. You were not supposed to see that, he said. I should have apologized. Instead, I looked past him and noticed another open door across the hall. Inside was a nursery painted soft blue, with an unopened crib still sealed in its box. Adrian followed my gaze, and for the first time since we met, he looked less like a billionaire planning an heir and more like a man afraid to hope for one. Adrian closed the nursery door without stepping inside. That room was prepared by my staff, he said, as though the unopened crib and carefully chosen blue walls meant nothing. Of course, I replied. Your staff also writes notes about me in your handwriting. His eyes narrowed, but before he could answer, his phone rang. The medical center wanted us there at 8 the next morning for the compatibility test. Adrian used the call as an escape, and I let him. Some people ran from difficult conversations. Adrian Whitmore scheduled appointments over them. The clinic occupied the top floor of a private building overlooking Central Park, all white walls, silent elevators, and furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. Dr. Evelyn Brooks greeted Adrian with the tired patience of someone who had argued with him professionally for years. She explained that the test would measure how our scent profiles responded in a controlled room. There will be no physical contact, she said, looking directly at me. If either of you becomes uncomfortable, we stop immediately. Adrian adjusted his cuff. This is unnecessary. The preliminary results were sufficient. The preliminary results were based on blood work, Dr. Brooks replied. This measures instinctive compatibility. Adrian went still at the word instinctive. I noticed because I had started noticing everything about him, which felt unwise after less than 24 hours. We entered a small glass-walled room with 2 chairs placed 6 feet apart. A ventilation system hummed above us. At first, nothing happened. Adrian sat perfectly straight, hands folded, expression unreadable. Then the machine released the scent blockers from the room. His scent reached me slowly, clean and quiet, like winter air moving through cedar trees. Mine must have reached him at the same moment. His shoulders tightened. His fingers curled around the edge of the chair. A monitor began to beep. Adrian, Dr. Brooks called through the speaker. I am fine. He was not. His breathing had turned shallow, and the color had drained from his face. I stood, but I did not move closer. Do you want me to leave? I asked. His eyes lifted to mine. For once, there was no polished answer waiting behind them. No, the word was barely audible. I lowered myself to the floor instead, keeping the distance between us. Can I come closer? He looked toward the door, then back at me. The monitor beeped faster. Yes. I moved one step at a time until I was beside his chair, still leaving enough space for him to pull away. Adrian reached first. His hand closed around the sleeve of my jacket, not my wrist, not my skin, just the fabric, as though even that small contact required more courage than he wanted me to see. His breathing slowly steadied. The room became quiet again. You can let go whenever you want, I said. I know. He did not let go. Dr. Brooks entered several minutes later holding a tablet, Her expression caught somewhere between concern and disbelief. Adrian released my sleeve immediately. "What is it?" he asked. She turned the screen toward us. The system recalculated the result 3 times. "Your compatibility is not 98%. Adrian's face hardened. "Then what is it?" Dr. Brooks looked from him to me. "It exceeds the standard scale. This pattern has only been documented in true bond-compatible pairs." Adrian stood so quickly that his chair shifted behind him. "Run it again." "I already did." He looked at me as though I had become a problem money could not solve. I should have made a joke. Instead, I remembered the nursery, the files, and the way his hand had held my sleeve. "Maybe this is why you chose me," I said quietly. Adrian's expression changed. "No," he answered. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid." Adrian did not speak during the ride back to the penthouse. He sat beside me in the town car with his attention fixed on the city beyond the tinted window, as if Manhattan had personally offended him. I gave him 10 quiet minutes before asking, "What exactly are you trying to avoid?" "Complications." That sounds suspiciously like a word people use when they do not want to admit they are afraid. His gaze shifted toward me. "You have known me for 2 days. And you had a 3-month file on me. So technically you started first." His mouth almost curved, but the expression vanished when his phone chimed. Dr. Brooks had ordered him to stop using his current suppressants until the clinic could examine them. Adrian read the message twice, then locked the screen. "I have managed my cycles for years," he said. "I do not require supervision." That statement lasted until shortly after midnight. I woke to an alarm pulsing through the penthouse and a calm, automated voice announcing that the medical privacy system had activated. Every exterior door sealed. The scent filters shut down. I found Adrian in the hallway outside his bedroom, one hand braced against the wall, his face pale with panic. "Do not come closer," he said. I stopped immediately. "Tell me what you need." "Nothing." That is clearly not true. He tried to straighten, but his breathing remained uneven. The medication change had triggered an early heat response, and the locked apartment had turned the air heavy with cedar and winter rain. My instincts noticed. I noticed them noticing, which was deeply inconvenient. Still, instinct was not permission. I stayed 6 feet away. "Dr. Brooks is on the phone," I said, setting my cell on a table between us. Her voice guided Adrian through each step. Water, lower temperature, slow breathing, distance unless he requested otherwise. I opened the balcony ventilation controls and dimmed the lights. Adrian sat on the floor with his back against the wall, eyes closed, trying to match my breathing. "In for 4, I said softly. "Hold for 4. Out for 4. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. Time became the hum of the air system and the quiet count between us. When Adrian finally opened his eyes, he looked exhausted. "Why are you still over there?" he asked. "Because you told me not to come closer." His fingers tightened around the edge of his sleeve. "You may come closer now." I moved slowly and sat beside him, leaving several inches between our shoulders. He leaned toward me. Only when he was ready. His forehead rested against my jacket, light as a question. I did not touch him until he whispered, "It is all right." Then I placed one hand over his, nothing more. By morning, the worst had passed. Adrian woke on the couch with my coat covering him and found me sitting near the locked front door, keeping watch in case he needed anything. "You stayed awake all night," he said. "I have had worse shifts." He studied me for a long moment. "You could have taken advantage of the compatibility. You were vulnerable. Most alphas would call that an opportunity. I am not most alphas." He looked down at the coat gathered around him, and something in his guarded expression finally softened. Later that afternoon, his attorney delivered a revised contract. Adrian had changed one clause without discussing it with me. If the process succeeded, I would no longer disappear after the child was born. I would have guaranteed visitation rights. I looked across the table at him. "Why did you change your mind?" Adrian kept his eyes on the document. "Because last night, you had every reason to take control." His voice grew quieter. "Instead, you gave it back to me." 3 weeks later, Dr. Brooks called us into her office and smiled before she said a single word. Adrian noticed first. "Do not look pleased unless you are certain," he warned. She turned the monitor toward us. "I am certain." The procedure worked. For several seconds, neither of us moved. A tiny image glowed on the screen, little more than a pale curve surrounded by shadow, but Adrian stared at it, as though the entire world had narrowed to that one point of light. "Everything looks healthy," Dr. Brooks continued. You are about 5 weeks along. Adrian folded his hands in his lap. Controlled. Perfectly calm. Only the slight tremble in his thumb betrayed him. I wanted to reach for him, but I waited. He looked at me, then quietly held out his hand. I took it. That was how we celebrated, with our fingers linked between two clinic chairs while Dr. Brooks pretended to study her notes. Pregnancy changed the penthouse in ways no legal agreement had predicted. Adrian became sensitive to the smell of coffee, so I stopped brewing it before he woke. Crackers appeared beside his bed every morning. I replaced the sharp floral soap in the guest bathroom after it made him nauseated, and I learned that peppermint tea helped when nothing else did. He complained about every adjustment. Then he used all of them. One morning, I found him standing in the unfinished nursery, staring at the crib box. It requires assembly, he said. That is generally how furniture works. The instructions contain 47 steps. You run a global company. Companies come with qualified employees. We spent 2 hours building it together. Adrian read every direction twice. I ignored half of them. Somehow the crib survived both management styles. That night, I passed his room and heard him speaking softly. Your father is impossible, he told the baby. I leaned against the doorframe. Which one? Adrian looked up, startled, then almost smiled. Go away, Mason. I did, but I carried that almost smile with me for the rest of the day. By the 8th week, reporters noticed that I entered Whitmore Tower with Adrian every morning and left beside him every evening. Photographs appeared online. Headlines called me his secret alpha, his bodyguard, his scandal, and one particularly imaginative article called me a former mercenary, which would have been impressive if it were remotely true. The board summoned Adrian to an emergency meeting. They claimed the rumors threatened investor confidence. What they actually feared was that someone had entered Adrian's life without their permission. Claire Whitmore sat at the far end of the conference table, elegant and watchful. Tell them he is an employee, she advised. People understand employees. Adrian glanced at me. And if they ask why I live with him, say it is temporary. Temporary. The word landed harder than it should have. We stood outside Whitmore Tower after the meeting, surrounded by cameras and shouted questions. Adrian had prepared a statement denying any personal relationship. I knew because I had seen it in his hand. Then one reporter called me a paid alpha and asked how much Adrian had spent to secure my loyalty. Adrian stopped walking. The crowd went quiet. He folded the prepared statement once, then lowered it. Mason Reed is not an employee, he said. Claire's expression changed behind the glass doors. Adrian stepped closer to me, his shoulder brushing mine. He is the man I chose. Cameras flashed across the plaza. I knew it was strategy. I knew it protected the company, the pregnancy, and our contract. My mind understood every reason. My heart heard only one word. Chose. By sunrise, Adrian's sentence had become every headline in the country. He is the man I chose. The words followed us through the penthouse, across television screens, and into the quiet spaces where neither of us knew what to say. For one reckless hour, I let myself believe he had meant them. Then Claire released the contract. Every page appeared online, including the payment, the medical terms, and the clause requiring me to leave after the child was born. Reporters gathered outside Whitmore Tower. Commentators called Adrian desperate and called me worse. I turned off the television after one host suggested I had studied Adrian for months to exploit him. That is enough, Adrian said from behind me. He looked pale, one hand resting protectively against his stomach. You should be lying down. You should stop pretending this does not affect you. I have survived bad press before. This is not only bad press. They are treating you like you bought a family. His expression tightened. And they are treating you like you sold one. I had no answer for that. By noon, the board demanded my immediate removal from the penthouse. Their attorneys warned that my presence could damage Adrian's claim that the arrangement had become personal. I packed before he could ask me to. 2 suitcases. The same 2 I had carried in weeks earlier, except now the guest room felt like mine. The kitchen held my coffee mug, and an unfinished wooden mobile waited beside the crib we had built together. Adrian found me near the elevator. His face revealed nothing. He held an envelope in one hand. The final payment, he said. I stared at it. I did not ask for it. It belongs to you. Does it? My voice came out quieter than I intended. You told the whole world you chose me. I said what was necessary. There it was. Clean. Efficient. Exactly the kind of sentence Adrian used when he wanted feelings to disappear. I accepted the envelope because refusing it would have required more strength than I had left. Then I suppose the arrangement is over. His fingers curled at his side. That would be best. I waited for him to stop me. He did not. The elevator doors closed between us, and the last thing I saw was Adrian standing alone in the enormous foyer with one hand pressed against the wall. I went directly to Lily's hospital, but Dr. Brooks called before I reached her room. Mason, do not leave the city. Adrian ended the contract. This is not about the contract. Her voice lowered. There is something you need to know. We met at a quiet diner 3 blocks from the clinic. She placed a copy of Henry Whitmore's amended trust on the table. Adrian told you he needed an heir to keep control of the company. Yes. That requirement was removed 6 years ago. I read the page twice. The words did not change. Then why did he hire me? Dr. Brooks folded her hands. Because his physicians told him this might be his only safe chance to have a child. Adrian wanted a family, but he did not believe anyone would stay once they saw how frightened he was of losing one. My throat tightened. So he created an agreement with an ending. A contract could leave him, she said gently, without ever calling it abandonment. I looked down at the envelope Adrian had given me. Inside was the check and a handwritten note with only 5 words. I am sorry I chose fear. I read Adrian's note until the 5 words blurred together. I am sorry I chose fear. Dr. Brooks watched me from across the diner table, but I could not explain why that apology hurt more than the contract ever had. Adrian had not hired me because he needed an heir. He had hired me because a legal ending felt safer than trusting someone to stay. I left the diner determined to return to the penthouse, but Adrian refused every call. His assistant said he was unavailable. His attorney said all communication had to go through legal counsel. Then Claire sent me a recording. Adrian's voice came first, distant and strained. Mine followed. I only agreed because I needed the money. The sentence was real, but the silence around it was wrong. I remembered saying it during an early conversation with Lily, followed immediately by words Claire had removed. I needed the money then, but I am staying because Adrian matters to me. In Claire's version, those words were gone. She had sent the same recording to Adrian. I drove to Whitmore Tower, but security would not let me pass the lobby. Claire appeared on the mezzanine above me, calm and immaculate. He finally understands what you are, she said. A man who signed a contract? I replied, that was never a secret. A man who can be purchased. You should know better than anyone that Adrian is not foolish enough to believe an edited recording. Her smile barely changed. Fear does not require proof. That was the problem. Claire had not created Adrian's fear. She had only given it a voice. I returned to Lily's hospital room with no plan and too much anger. She was sitting beside the window, reading the discharge papers. You look terrible, she said. Thank you. You look expensive. She laughed, then handed me a billing statement. The balance was 0. I assumed Adrian's final payment had cleared early, but the payment date stopped me. It had been made 4 days before I signed the contract. Who paid this? I asked. Lily pointed to the donor line. Whitmore Family Medical Foundation. Adrian had erased her debt before he knew whether I would agree. The $500,000 had not been bait. It had been a way to let me accept help without feeling owned by it. My phone rang before I could process that truth. Dr. Brooks spoke quickly. Adrian had collapsed during a board meeting. The pregnancy was stable, but his blood pressure had risen, and the medication in his system did not match the prescription she had approved. I reached the private clinic less than 20 minutes later. Dr. Brooks met me outside his room. He is awake, she said, but he asked us not to let you in. Through the narrow window, I saw Adrian lying beneath a white blanket, one hand resting over the place where our child was growing. He looked smaller than he ever had in the penthouse. Not weak, just alone. I placed my palm against the door. Tell him I know about Lily's bill, I said. Dr. Brooks entered and spoke quietly to him. Adrian closed his eyes. He did not open the door. I sat in the hallway anyway. An hour passed, then another. Near midnight, the lock clicked. Adrian stood on the other side in a hospital robe, pale and exhausted. Why are you still here? He asked. I rose slowly. Because you chose me 3 months before we met, I said. Now I am choosing you back. Adrian stood in the doorway for several seconds, one hand gripping the edge of his hospital robe as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. You should not choose me out of guilt, he said. I am not. Or because of the baby. I am not. His eyes lowered. Then you are making a poor decision. I stepped closer, but stopped before entering his room. May I come in? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Even now, after everything, I wanted the choice to remain his. Adrian looked at the empty chair beside his bed, then nodded. I entered and closed the door softly behind me. He sat down, exhausted, while I remained near the wall. Claire sent you the recording? I said. Yes. It was edited. I know that now. Did you know when you ended things? His silence answered for him. Fear did not require proof. Claire had understood that perfectly. Adrian folded his hands over the blanket. I heard you say you needed the money, and suddenly every good thing between us felt temporary. I didn't need the money. His expression tightened. But that was why I signed. It was not why I stayed. I told him about Lily's hospital bill and the date of the payment. Adrian looked away. You were never supposed to know. Why did you pay it before I agreed? Because your sister needed care. Your answer should not have decided whether she received it. That was Adrian. He could secretly erase a crushing debt, then act as if kindness were an administrative error. I pulled the chair closer and sat beside him. I am not here because you paid the bill. I am here because you stayed awake during my sister's surgery, even though you had a board meeting at 7 in the morning. I am here because you pretend the nursery does not matter, but you check the crib every night. I am here because you are afraid, and you still keep trying. His eyes became bright, but he refused to look away this time. Dr. Brooks entered carrying a sealed medication bottle and a printed report. The pharmacy label did not match the contents. Someone with access to Adrian's private medical schedule had replaced part of his prescription. The security records showed Claire's assistant entering the executive health suite twice that week. The same digital account had also altered the recordings sent to Adrian. This is enough for the board, Dr. Brooks said. The emergency vote begins in 40 minutes. Adrian reached for his phone, already becoming the chief executive officer again. Then the monitor beside him sounded a gentle warning. Dr. Brooks, check the screen. Your blood pressure is rising. You are not leaving this room. The company could be transferred to Claire tonight. Then let it, I said. Adrian stared at me. You do not understand what I built. I do. But your child needs you more than the board does. His phone rang. The chairman's name appeared on the screen. Adrian watched it for 3 long seconds, then turned the phone face down. Send the evidence without me, he told Dr. Brooks. My attorney can represent my vote. After she left, the room grew quiet. I placed my hand on the mattress between us, palm open. Adrian studied it before slowly placing his hand in mine. I have spent my entire life choosing the company, he whispered. Tonight, choose yourself. His fingers tightened around mine. No, he said, looking directly at me. Tonight, I am choosing us. The board removed Claire before sunrise. Adrian's attorney sent the evidence. Dr. Brooks confirmed the medication records, and the chairman called the hospital personally to say the company remained under Adrian's control. Adrian listened without celebration. When the call ended, he placed the phone on the table and looked at me. I thought winning would feel different. You spent the night protecting something more important. His hand moved to his stomach, and his expression softened. Us, he said, as if he was still learning the shape of the word. The months that followed were quieter. Adrian returned to work, but he stopped treating exhaustion like a badge of honor. I attended every appointment. We finished the nursery. He chose pale green curtains after rejecting 12 shades that looked identical to me. I installed the wooden mobile above the crib, then discovered I had attached the stars upside down. Adrian stared at it for several seconds. I assume gravity works differently in your version of the universe. The baby will appreciate creative thinking. He laughed. Not almost. Not briefly. He laughed until one hand covered his mouth and the other rested over the small curve beneath his sweater. That sound became my favorite thing in the penthouse. Theo arrived 6 weeks later on a clear October morning. Adrian held my hand through every uncertain hour, and when Dr. Brooks finally placed our son against his chest, the entire room seemed to become still. Theo had Adrian's pale hair and a serious little frown that suggested he already disapproved of our parenting. He looks like you during board meetings, I whispered. Adrian looked down at him with tears in his eyes. He is perfect. I touched one finger to Theo's tiny hand. He closed his fist around it immediately. Half an hour old, and he already knew how to keep me from leaving. We brought him home 3 days later. The penthouse no longer felt like a showroom. Bottles stood beside crystal glasses. Blankets covered the expensive couch. A stuffed bear occupied the center of Adrian's carefully organized desk. One evening, after Theo finally fell asleep, Adrian asked me to meet him in the nursery. He stood beside the crib holding a folder. My stomach tightened when he handed it to me. Another contract? I asked. No, inside was a marriage license application with both our names printed at the top. Adrian had signed nothing. He had left every line open. The first time, I offered you money because I believed an ending would protect me, he said. Then, you stayed when you had every reason to leave. I looked from the papers to him. What are you asking? His voice trembled, but he did not hide it. Stay because you want to. Stay because this is your home. Stay because Theo is your son and because I love you. The room blurred for a moment. I placed the folder on the dresser and stepped closer. May I kiss you? Adrian smiled through his tears. You still ask. Always. He nodded, and I pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead before pulling him into my arms. Later, we signed the papers at the kitchen table while Theo slept nearby. Adrian placed the old contract in the bottom drawer, torn neatly through the middle. Above it, he set a photograph of the three of us beneath the nursery window, sunlight across our faces. The agreement had promised him an heir. What we built gave him a family.